For decades, Victorinox has reigned supreme, but there's a couple companies coming out of Italy that are looking to shake things up. This is the Fox Vulpis pocket knife, and the question is, does it have what it takes to really compete? So for starters, dimensions, weight, it's all going to be really important in this review. So let's go ahead and start with that. This thing is going to come in around just over half an inch. What is it? 5/8 of an inch, or just over around 11 millimeters in thickness. This is the 4-layer version, and there are actually thinner ones. So I got the one that had all of the major components. So it has the saw, it has the scissor, the opener layer, and the blade. So this one is, I thought, a really good starting point. It's also just a little bit under 3 inches in total length, or 74 millimeters in total length. All right, now as far as weight is concerned, it's 62 or around 63 grams, and of course the conversion here. This is one of many variants you can get. This is the aluminum handled variety, and they also have titanium handles as well. So they're kind of targeting a more premium stat line. And there are aluminum handled Victorinox knives. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we're going to start with this. The blade, which does have a half stop, and that's going to be important to note, something I wish Victorinox would do, is going to be in N690 blade steel, which is definitely a step up from what we see in Victorinox knives in general. So that one is a bit of an improvement. And then we have additional components in here, including a saw, very much reminiscent of Victorinox in the way they do things. And this is a pretty short saw. Total length is about 61 millimeters from choil there to the end. And we also have a scissor on this. It's pretty small. I also want to point out that it becomes relatively thin at the tip, and unfortunately is a little bit more flexible than it needs to be in order to have cutting potential at the very, very end. But the spring tension works really well. It's very reminiscent, once again, of a Victorinox, and the cutting geometry is good on this. That is something I will say. So nicely done. Pretty good job there. It also has opener layers, and I gotta say, I really like the cutouts for these. It's much, much easier to access. So we have a bottle opener with a pretty large flathead on this side, and then we have a can opener with a smaller flathead on this side. I actually really like this because this also doubles as a nice little package opener as well. So actually a big fan of the way they have designed these. Now, we talked about the blade steel, but we also need to talk about the steel in the rest of the components here. And this is going to be my first sort of sidetrack with this tool. It's one thing to improve the steel of the blade, but when we're talking about a multi-tool, that is only one part of it. And in some cases, it might be the least used component in the whole thing. So the question is, what is the steel in the other implements? Well, that's going to be base 420 stainless. Now, not to be confused with 420 HC that you will find in things like Leatherman and so on. 420 HC has a higher hardness range that will result in better overall wear resistance and last a lot longer before it has to be sharpened. Base 420 is an ancient steel. It's been around for many, many, many decades, and unfortunately does not reach a hardness level that lets it last for any real length of time. And in some cases, actually probably almost guaranteed, this is going to take less abuse than even the very soft steel that is chosen by Victorinox, unfortunately. So that is my big thing here that I'm going to be pointing out, is that although we have excellent steel in the blade, and I actually do really like the shape and design of this, we have base 420 in everything else. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, price. Where does this sit? Well, as you can see here, we're talking about a truly premium price point for something that is competing with Victorinox, who offers knives at a much lower price point. For example, a similar tool set, possibly with a little bit more going for it, is the 93 millimeter. This is the Farmer X model. Now, obviously, it's a little bit thicker. It's definitely a lot longer, and we are coming in also about 35, what did I say? Yeah, about 35 grams, 36 grams heavier as well. But this tool is all made in the same steel, which is going to perform better than the other implements, and it's coming in significantly cheaper than the Fox Vulpis. Now, you might argue, okay, this is a 5th pocket carry and this is not, and I agree with that. I actually think that's where this kind of fills in nicely. However, it begs the question, why would I choose that over, say, a 58 millimeter that could be even the Mini Champ, which gives me more tools, a variety, including an inline Phillips driver, something this does not have, and also a diamond file for your nails, which this doesn't have, and maybe a better variety of flatheads. And the Mini Champ is quite a bit lighter than this would otherwise be. The only major advantage that I can see is having the longer blade. Now you might say, okay, but that has a saw too, and that's true. But the usefulness of a saw is proportional to how long that saw actually is. So generally, the longer the saw, the more useful it is, the more versatile it's going to be. And I would almost always rather have a longer saw if given the choice, right? Especially if I'm going to use it for outdoors. But there's a second half of this. Just because it's smaller doesn't necessarily mean it's better, especially when we're talking slip joints, because although it has a half stop, which Victorinox should do immediately, that's a great thing. I love that. You need enough handle to be able to hold on to that item and control it properly. Where when you're using this, you're really basically getting a 3-finger grip. Not bad though, I will say, not bad. And I still think it would be kind of cool to have all of those tools in such a small package, but realistically, you're only gonna do notching with that saw. You're not gonna get much more than that. Now, the scissors, let's talk about the scissor performance for a second. Let's just take out this paracord here. The problem I have is with the flexibility, it's not going to cut as cleanly as I would like. Now this is a brand new scissor and I've not used it more than just doing a little bit of testing, but if you could see this, this is the 58 millimeter scissor and there's a lot less flex in that scissor. I'm not even adding any lateral pressure, where with that one I kind of have to, otherwise it's just not going to cut at all. It'll just go right between the blades. There's a rigidity to the steel done here, and it has to do a little bit with the how thick the blades are, and that rigidity is incredibly important if you want it to cut at the very tip, which for most scissors, if you're using it daily, you want to be able to cut at the tip. It's what makes Victorinox such a good scissor choice, because of that rigidity. It gives them precision cuts that are great for hygiene. They're great for cutting singular threads on a piece of fabric. That's where they really shine. And it's the state that you want to use a scissor in that is not great for using a blade, right? Those are the situations you're going to run into. Okay, now I beat up on the Fox Vulpis a little bit here, but where does this sit? Would I still consider it for other reasons? And I think for me, what I like the most about it is its real size prospect. So it sits underneath the 91 millimeter very nicely, and it really is a size that fits properly in that 5th pocket. That's quite a bit bigger than the 58 millimeter, in the sense that it actually, like, you're getting real tools here. You're getting a real saw. You're getting bigger can openers, bigger flatheads that are really feel a little bit more substantial. In fact, I think the biggest competitor is probably the rake knife tool, which has 12C27 in all 3 of its implements, and it has a scissor right here, which performs very, very well, I should mention. No problem with that. And it also has a flathead as well, a flathead with a pull cutter and a bottle opener. This is probably a bit of a closer comparison between the 3. Let me bring these up so you can see them. You can see we're somewhere in the middle. So it is fitting a very interesting size. In fact, let me go get the 84 millimeter that they still make. Okay, now here's an 84 millimeter, and you can see it's coming in just a little bit bigger than that as well. So it's an interesting size, definitely an interesting size tool. And it does have some implements that I think are quite interesting. In fact, I kind of like the saw, even though I've just said it's kind of small. Maybe there is a place for it in the sense that this is kind of a cool platform. And the fact that you can get premium steel, you can get titanium handles, I dig that. I dig that. If you remove the scissors and the saw, and you have a two-layer tool, that's a very compact, small knife. And if you get it with the premium offering, you're getting M390, I believe, as well as titanium handles. Well, that's kind of an interesting combination. And the half stop, I cannot emphasize enough how stupid it is that after almost more than 100 years in business, what is all this fuzz about? Victorinox is still not using half stops on their blades. It's really dumb. I don't know why they do that, but they should change it immediately. And this is a good example of doing that correctly. And also, I will say that opening up these implements is quite a bit easier because of the full cutout that it gives. Close. We're almost there. I think that this company has the potential to get it right, but I think takes a little bit of a tweak. My biggest concern is with the steel itself. 420 stainless is not an acceptable steel in any premium product with any exception. They're not the only ones doing this. We talked about this knife as well, which was from MKM. The MagnaCut blade is incredible, but then they used 420 stainless and everything else. That's not okay. You can't do that and have people take it as seriously, because the other components are just as important, maybe even more important, you know, when they're talking about these pocket knives, okay? I would have rather seen every single component on this be 440C, which would be a jump up from Victorinox steel and would have given longer, better longevity, I should say, than what they have here with 420 and with N690 overall. Like, obviously N690 is probably a little bit better than 440C. I'm not sure by how much, not by that much. And then I would be willing to spend the money on this. And I think it would be worth the price point for it to have all components in 440C. Honestly, the only geometry or only fit and finish issue that I have with the entire thing is just the flexibility and the thinness of the blades on the scissors. It just needs to be a little bit thicker so that it can kind of keep from flexing. And then I think this is right where it needs to be from a performance aspect. It's just about materials. Let me know what you think. Am I off base when it comes to this implement? Does it actually offer something that you feel Victorinox is lacking? I will tell you one thing, it's a damn good looking implement, that's for sure. They really did a good job with that. And unlike some other competitors, like the Schweizer that has fundamental technical flaws, this doesn't seem like it has that, which is really, well, it's really encouraging. And I like to see that Italy is taking on this category because I think it's a really good one to do so. Millions of Swiss Army knives are sold every year, and there hasn't really been anything to compete with it. So that's pretty much it for today. As always, thank you guys so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.